So welcome back to the Happiness Project. Last week we kicked off our year-long focus on happiness using Gretchen Rubin's wonderful book, The Happiness Project, which will be our guide for our work together over the next year. So every month we're going to be exploring a major theme, and these are themes or categories that Gretchen identified as being important in achieving, and even more importantly, maintaining happiness. So this week, we're going to begin our journey with her theme for January. And the theme for January is boost energy. Would anyone here like to have more energy? If I could raise both hands, I would. So Gretchen explains why she started with this, and it was actually relatively brilliant of her. To launch the new year in my happiness project, I decided to focus on boosting my energy. More vitality, I hoped, would make it easier for me to stick to all my happiness project resolutions in future months. Now, I love this. You know how we've all heard of vicious cycles or vicious circles? In a virtuous circle. Isn't that a nice spin? Research shows that being happy energizes you, and at the same time, having more energy makes it easier for you to engage in activities like socializing and exercising. We'll talk more about that next week. That actually boost happiness. Studies also show that when you feel energetic, your self-esteem rises. Feeling tired, on the other hand, makes everything seem arduous. I know that when I feel energetic, I find it much easier to behave in ways that make me happy. Hence her reasoning for starting off the year by boosting energy. So she broke this theme down into 5 resolutions. Each of these subtopics every month she calls her happiness resolutions. And they deal with both metaphysical and physical methods to do whatever it is we're doing, in this case, increasing energy. So she started off with go to sleep earlier, exercise better. I'm just grateful she didn't say more. Although something is better than nothing, I guess. Toss, restore, and organize, tackle a nagging task, and act more energetic. So those are the 5 resolutions that we're going to be exploring over the next 3 weeks. Now, I decided to do it a little bit out of order because we have our lovely Melody who will be doing the decluttering workshop this afternoon. We're going to do go to sleep early and exercise better next week, so you get 1 week reprieve from having to do both of those things. So today, we're going to look at tossing, restoring, and organizing, and tackling nagging tasks. I love this topic. I love cleaning and clearing and restoring order. I love tidy. Now, you can write your name on my coffee table, but it's tidy. See, I differentiate between tidy and dust-free. Tidy is very important to me, so I just loved this chapter, and I love the fun that she had around this subject. Now, she was surprised because Gretchen is a lawyer, by the way, was a law clerk for Sandra Day O'Connor, and loves to do research, which is why this book is just so well done, in my humble opinion. She was surprised to find out, she said when she researched the subject, the psychologists and social scientists who do happiness research never mention clutter at all. I also found that surprising. By contrast, when I turned to popular culture, discussion of clutter clearing abounded. Whatever the happiness scientists might study, ordinary people, that would be us, are convinced that clearing clutter will boost their happiness. So as she began to identify and clear the clutter in her home, she had a little fun with categorizing different types of clutter. First, there was a nostalgic clutter. Now, I'm not going to look at Ken as I talk about this one, because I won't even mention the boxes of nostalgic clutter that we have in our garage. Luckily, we have a very secure relationship, and he's laughing. But I won't mention that we have boxes of newspapers from 40 years ago, or tchotchkes from numerous world fairs, and electronic equipment long since obsolete, actually one piece of which is in the sound booth. Feel free to check it out before you leave. That's Ken's favorite kind of clutter. I'll get to mine in a minute. Then there's what she calls the self-righteous conservation clutter, made up of things that we keep because they're useful. Never mind the fact that they're not useful for us. So I include in this category all those things that we're holding on to because we think at some point we're going to remember A, how to use them, or B, how to fix them, and then they will be useful again. Never mind that it would be cheaper and take less time and money just to replace it at this point. Next is bargain clutter. This is unnecessary stuff that we buy. Why? Because it's such a great bargain. This is related to freebie clutter. This is stuff we got for free or were given. This is the hand-me-downs, the gifts, the giveaways, the things we don't really like or need, but heck, we accepted them because they were free. There's crutch clutter. Things I used but knew I shouldn't. In Gretchen's case, this was the horrible green sweatshirt that she refused to throw away, but I know many of us have such items in our closets and on our shelves. Then there's buyer's remorse clutter. It's the stuff that we bought. We were immediately sorry that we bought, but that we didn't want to admit we shouldn't have bought. So we let it sit around for a while so that we can justify eventually giving it away. And this is my personal favorite. This is what I do. Aspirational clutter. These are the things I wish I could use or still wear or master. This would be things like the multiple counted cross-stitch kits that I used to be able to do without a magnifying glass, but no longer can. The shoes that are just too uncomfortable, yes, there is such a thing. And the Learn Italian CDs that had been gathering dust. Yeah, you want to borrow those? Go ahead. They can gather dust on your shelf. Yeah, yes. Yeah, you will see many of my items at the gym sale. And the truth is, clutter by any other name is still clutter. It's that flotsam and jetsam of our lives that takes up space that could be used in otherwise productive ways or not. Because I've noticed for myself over the last couple of years that I don't want every space to be filled. I don't want every horizontal surface or every shelf or every wall or every square on my calendar to be filled. I want empty space, room to breathe, right, Dinah? Yeah. Room to grow, room to expand, and room for possibility. One of Gretchen's college roommates called this always having an empty shelf, hence the title of today's talk, the joy of an empty shelf. She says no matter where she goes or how much stuff she has, she always keeps an empty shelf in her home. Empty shelves, empty hours, and oh, the luxury of empty days suggest possibility of the good yet to enter our lives. My dear friend, Reverend Claudel County, was my very first Unity minister when I found Unity back in 1996 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She tells a great story of when she went off to ministerial school. In addition to being a gifted teacher and minister, she's also a gifted musician, has actually wrote some of the songs that we now sing regularly in the Unity movement. And one of the things she had to leave behind when she went to ministerial school was her beloved piano. There just wasn't room for it, and she didn't have the resources to bring it with her, and she missed it. So she found pianos around the village and the chapels to play with, whenever she needed to play. And as you well know, when you play the piano, you're often called upon to play for all the services and all the social events, and so she did all of that. But she missed having a piano in her home. So she affirmed and visualized that she would have a piano, and nothing happened. And she affirmed and visualized and told her friends and colleagues that she wanted a piano, and nothing happened. And then she looked around her home, and she noticed that her small apartment was so full of stuff that there was no room for a piano. So she set about decluttering and clearing, and specifically left one whole wall in her apartment empty. No furniture and no bookshelves. Now, for Claudel, that was huge because we used to laugh about who had the most books in their home. Within a week, someone had given her a piano that she proudly placed on that wall. Some of you have noticed that the big pulpit that many of you didn't like, yes, David is very happy, he's doing cartwheels in the back, was not put back out here on the platform after we de-Christmased the property. We did not burn it. It is because our dear friend Michael Burke is making us a new pulpit for the platform. Thank you. Please thank him for that. So we decided just to leave this space as open and as pulpit-free as possible until that is complete. We are creating the space for what we want to flow into our lives. So what do we need to clear out of our lives to make room for our greater good? We have stuff. We have memorabilia. We have clutter. We also have thoughts and stories and beliefs and opinions that are just as real clutter in our minds as the other clutter is in our homes. Now, the Buddha addressed our predisposition to hold on to that mind clutter in a wonderful story from The Enlightened Mind, translated by Stephen Mitchell. And the Buddha says this: a man walking along a road sees a great river. Its near bank dangerous and frightening, its far bank safe. He collects sticks and foliage, makes a raft, paddles across the river, and reaches the other shore, the safe side of the shore. Now suppose that after he reaches that other shore, he takes the raft and he puts it on his head, and he carries it around with him wherever he goes. I want you to visualize that. Would he be using the raft in an appropriate way? That is where the people say, no. A reasonable person will realize that the raft has been very useful to them in getting across the river and arriving safely at the other shore, but that once we have arrived, it is proper to leave the raft behind and walk on without it. This is using the raft appropriately. In the same way, all truths, we could say all teachings, should be used to cross over. They should not be held on to once we have arrived. You should let go of even the most profound insight on the most wholesome teaching, and the more so unwholesome teachings. There are so many layers to this short story. The first thing to notice is that we are using tools and resources and the teachings at hand in order to cross the river, make the river a metaphor for any change or transition or challenge that we are experiencing in our lives. Now, what's interesting and what the Buddha is addressing is that our tendency is to get attached to those tools and resources and teachings once we get to the other side, and to carry them around with us as if there will never be another one available to us. I call this the phenomenon of when we're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We think that this particular teaching is it, and it's going to be it by God for the rest of our lives, no matter what river or stream or ocean we come to next to cross. I also think that the final lesson of this is so brilliant, because listen to what he says. You should let go of even the most profound insight on the most wholesome teaching. Notice he's not even asking us to let go of the teaching. He's asking us to let go of what that particular teaching meant, what we made it mean in the moment. How many of you have read a book, we'll say in our mid-20s, not too long ago for many of us, put that book down, and 10 years later, as we were decluttering, found that book again, picked it up, and reread it. And it was as if we were reading it for the first time. Have you ever experienced that? Or even that you've read a story or even a paragraph such as this. I've been using this teaching of the Buddha now for 8 years, and do you know, every time I teach it, I see something different in it. It's this phenomenon of us constantly making everything in our lives mean something, including the clutter, of forming a belief about it, and then being willing to let it go. It's not even that we have to embrace a new teaching, is that are we willing to let that new teaching take on new meaning in our lives, instead of carrying that same raft around for the rest of our lives. Lao Tzu agrees in his wonderful brevity from the Tao Te Ching, every day that passes, the sage discards another useless weight. So what useless weights are we holding on to? Either in our clutter or in our thinking. Now, Gretchen used this declutter resolution to practice several of her 12 commandments. If you haven't got the book yet, please do. Also, check out her website. It's wonderful. But here are the 3 commandments that she practiced. The 4th commandment, do it now. The 8th commandment, identify the problem. And the 10th commandment, do what ought to be done. Now, those sound very simple, and yet, in their brevity, are incredibly profound. Do it now. Identify the problem, do what ought to be done. I think if we approached our decluttering that way, Melody, it would go very quickly and easily, don't you? She also created a couple of things. She calls one the 1-minute rule. Don't postpone any task that can be done in 1 minute or less. And the 10-minute evening tidy-up rule. Take 10 minutes every night before going to bed to tidy up. 10 minutes. You notice how simple and easy and little all of these actions sound like, and yet how huge they are when you put them all together. The other resolution we're going to look at today is tackle a nagging task, and I have a real love-hate relationship with this one, because I know the items that I keep putting at the back of my list or at the bottom of my list are the ones that are the biggest drains on my energy. My friend Maria attributes this to the tension that we create when we make a promise. When we say we're going to do something, we create a tension between the moment we say it and the moment we do it. That tension isn't relieved until we actually keep the promise. What I have found is that the longer I let something go undone, the greater the tension becomes. And I have a perfect example of this. Ever since Ken and I moved to Georgia, we have maintained our Pennsylvania driver's licenses and license plates. Well, here's why. Remember, when we first came here, it was temporary. And we didn't know how long temporary would be, so we managed to justify never getting our Georgia licenses or tags. We just kept putting it off. We had all sorts of great reasons why we put it off. We didn't have time to study for the test. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know what it would cost. We didn't know how to do it. We have perfectly good Pennsylvania licenses and tags, which we kept renewing, by the way. The reasons just went on and on and on. But the truth was, we were living and working in Georgia. And although we had not promised the state of Georgia that we would get a driver's license, inherent in living and working in a state is that you will register with said state. So finally, last week, Ken went online and he researched how to get a Georgia's driver's license. Imagine our surprise to discover how incredibly easy it is to get a Georgia driver's license when you have a valid license from another state. So here's my visual aid for today's service. Oh yes, thank you, honey. Imagine our surprise to learn how easy it was, and that it was only 10 minutes from our home, 21 stinking bucks a pop. The forms were easy. The representatives were delightful. It took under an hour for us both to get our licenses. Now, here's why this is important, because you might think, well, so what? No, that was huge. Because look at all the beliefs we had to let go of to go get that license, right? First of all, we had to let go of the belief that it was going to be hard. How many of you have not done something because you believe it's going to be hard? Every person in this room, raise your hand. The research only took 10 minutes to figure out how to do this. Now, what was really interesting was, as we were at our booth getting our license, it is a slick system, you guys. The camera's right there. You turn one way to get your picture taken, and then you turn another way to look in the little thing and say, yep, you're nearsighted. You need glasses to drive. There was a lovely gentleman at the booth beside us, and we're just chatting away because, Ken and I, we're striking up a conversation with the young lady who was helping us, and we're commenting on the music playing in the background and having a great time. And this gentleman looks over at me, and he says, "This is really easy." Just like that. And I said, "Yeah." He says, "No, really, this is easy." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I didn't expect this to be easy." Right? 3 or 4 times. And I thought, I think we have a societal belief that those kinds of things are going to be hard. And yet, if we approach it with the energy that it could be easy and that these people just want to help us, how much sweeter the experience is. We also realized as we walked out of there with our Georgia licenses what an energy drain it had become. We didn't even realize that till we felt the relief and the energy boost of finally doing it. I couldn't wait to get back and show Annette that my picture was not terrible. So, for me, this topic, yes, please declutter your house. Please empty your shelves. But just as importantly, declutter our minds. Because that's what this topic keeps coming back to for me, is what thoughts and beliefs and opinions am I holding on to? What clutter is in my brain and in my heart that is preventing me from showing up in the fullness of who I am? Or as Ken said to the driver's license representative, from showing up as the best person I can be. Are we willing to look at what's underneath all these nagging tasks that we're not doing, or all the clutter that we're holding on to? My email inbox is cluttered. Does anybody else have a cluttered email inbox? Yes. So here's where this becomes a spiritual practice, is that as we're looking and as we're noticing the clutter both in our homes and our inboxes and in our hearts and in our minds, enter into self-inquiry about that. Why am I putting off responding to this email? What's up with me? Because you know, guys, sucky part of the talk, look in the mirror. It's always about us. Why am I not responding to this? Why am I not letting go of this? Why am I holding on to something I haven't used or worn for almost 10 years? Yeah, right. I've let go of that belief. I am free of that one at this point. Here's where it becomes that powerful practice, because we say that we believe in an abundant universe and in a God that's good, in a loving, benevolent universe. If that is really true, then why do we hold on to things? And why do we worry? Why are we afraid to let something go? Is it the fear that if we let it go, there will be nothing to take its place? This is a powerful, powerful practice, as evidenced by the energy I had when I walked out with that little card. This creates another virtuous circle. God, I love that. Doing those nagging tasks frees up energy to do more, which frees up energy to do more. And if we couple that with the self-inquiry that goes along with doing the task, it becomes a profound spiritual practice. Samuel Johnson wrote, "It is by studying little things, that we attain the great art of having a little misery and as much happiness as possible." By releasing and letting go of that which no longer serves us, whether it's our clutter or our beliefs, our fears, our worry, we open up our hearts and our minds and our shelves to accept that the good that is just waiting to flow into our lives. Or as we heard Clay read from the Dalai Lama earlier, that the very motion of our lives will be toward as much happiness as possible. Let's take that into meditation.